Thank you everyone for joining. And I know holiday season is starting. Right, of course, next week is Diwali, and then after that, November Thanksgiving. But thank you so much for coming. So I would like to welcome Devlin, and just to brief, most of you must be aware about. but Devlin is Chief Consulting Officer and President and Software Leader at Improving since 2010. Right? And the two cool quality what I want to communicate here is he's coming from a technology background and understand business, but he's passionate about solving business problem through technology. So here, Devlin is explaining about this topic where Agile design constraint, what happens when they break. So let's welcome, give a round of applause. Welcome, Devlin.
So I rather sneakily got everybody here to show up for an economics lesson that also has AI in it. So go us. So this actually came out of a conversation that I need to give you a little bit of background for. This is everything you need to know about me as a human, but it doesn't say at all why you should care about my opinion. So I was a Scrum.org professional Scrum. I hold 12 patents in the AI space and wrote a bunch of books in this space, in the data and heuristic space. And I currently am responsible for every client delivery project Improving does across 2,300 people. And so I spend a lot of time thinking about what's changing in our world and how that impacts the way we go about delivering software, and have for a lot of years. So I was Microsoft MVP in the application lifecycle management space, so unfortunately helped with TFS and then Azure DevOps and all that fun stuff. And so what I want to talk about and have a conversation with, and hopefully it's a conversation because me lecturing doesn't seem super interesting, is what do we do when the design constraints that Agile, specifically Scrum, was designed for break? Because agility was designed to solve very specific problems. And the question is, do we still have those problems, or do we have different problems that require different answers to them? Now, to do that, I got to put a little bit of historical constraint. Now, depending on who you talk to, the Agile movement started in the 40s with Kelly Johnson and Skunk Works, or in the 80s with a book called The Software Game, or in the 90s and 2000s that led to the Agile Manifesto. I'm not getting into that religious debate, so we're going to start in the 90s. So, when you look at the progression of software development into the 90s, you have this kind of interesting problem where developer time was the biggest constraint to solve for. Where there weren't enough developers, and we were trying to tackle these problems, and the developers were kind of the magic box people. It's like, oh yeah, they live over there in the cube, but they're a little weird and they don't speak natural English. We need a translator, so we're gonna have a business analyst. And they're never really good at predicting the future, so we'll put project management on top of them. And that's the world that Agile kind of stepped on top of and went, there's a better way, from the kind of traditional waterfall development structure. Now, the Scrum box was very, very important. The 2 weeks or 4 weeks or whatever your Scrum length was because the cost of interruption was really high. Now, the question is, why was the cost of interruption very high? And it's because the diligence and requirements gathering and interconnectedness and design time of each of those items that were in the sprint, if I interrupted, I wasted all that time and effort. And there was a bunch of preceding work, and so we would have these ceremonies where we would go through and we'd do planning, and that was like an all-day thing. And we would come up with, here's what we're committing to, and then we'd have focused time to deliver it. Now, as we've evolved in the Agile space, those edges have blurred. They've gotten softer because the design time required to get a functional piece of software is lower. And we have frameworks and we have tools that allow us to go tens and, depending on which estimate you look at, 35 to 70 times faster today than in 1990 for the amount of productivity from a single senior software developer. And so the cost of interruption is actually lower because we've increased the amount of available labor through those productivity gains. Now, the second piece that we were trying to solve in these design constraints was that we needed fast iteration with customers, because this idea that we were going to have big design up front, and then we were going to go build the thing we designed, assumed that we could have a perfect design. And so agility was like, you're never going to get perfect. We need to get rapid conversations with customers. We need iterative development, all this. Now this sounds very basic to every Agilist in the room, right? Hopefully, yes, nodding, awesome. But it's important to know that Scrum and Agile were a response to those inputs. And so how do we look at where we're at today and how the inputs of the system are changing, and does the design approach that led us to the Agile methodologies and Scrum and Kanban and single piece flow and these kind of things, and the scaled Agile approach or LETS or Nexus, each of these are building on top of those core design constraints. And so when those core design constraints start to fracture, we have to kind of rethink the entire level of inference that we've put on top of it. Now, modern Agile looks a little bit different than that original 1990s version. We've grown this a little bit, but modern Agile is confronting some interesting problems. So AI enhanced productivity, allowing for a massive forward surge in developer productivity. And by developer productivity, I'm going to define this very specifically. Lines of code produced. It's not a great measure, it's not even a good measure, but it's the measure I'm going to use. And not even quality lines produced, just quantity. We're just talking quantity output, right? And so if I can massively accelerate the efforts of a developer, then I've changed some of the equation coming into modern Agile, and we have to figure that out. The other one is that the quality bar in Agile has always been this interestingly amorphous space in a way for professional software development that it really isn't for most other professions. The bar of quality for even a teacher in public school, they have malpractice insurance because there's a minimum bar of quality and a standard of practice. For attorneys, for doctors. I can't go to my doctor and be like, hey, I want to save some money on surgery, so can you skip washing your hands so I don't have to pay for the soap? What's my doctor going to tell me? No, because they're a professional and there's a standard of care. But we still believe it's perfectly reasonable to ask a software development team to skimp on testing to save budget. And so by testing becoming vastly cheaper, that's becoming less of a succinct argument going forward. And so then this idea started percolating for us of what's this going to do to our overall team structures, right? Now, our current approach to team structure is a process person, whether that's a Kanban master, a Scrum master, a project manager, whatever that structure looks like, a business analyst who's there to help with the product ownership because it's a lot to keep up with the team today. And then 3 to 5 developers, 2 to 3 QAs, that's a team, right? Now that's stretching on the high side at the big ones, the Scrum definition of 6 plus or minus 3. And on the low side, you're probably just fine. But when I can almost triple the output of a team of that size, what happens to my product owner and BA when they get outrun? Is the design approach of sprint planning still serving that team if you're going to constantly not have enough to fill the bucket for velocity? So, welcome to my economics lesson. I'm going to introduce you to my favorite GPT. This is the economics turn of generally productive technology. We've had 9 of these in the modern era, from electricity to the internal combustion engine, to the steam engine, to the internet and the personal computers. These graphs are electricity and the personal computer and the internet, but it is productivity adjusted for population growth. So this is year-over-year productivity change adjusted for population growth. Productivity for electricity for 14 years was a compounding growth year over year of gain. Now that's massive when you apply it to an economic scale of a country, and these are US. But if, let's say we all own a manufacturing we were building widgets in 1920. It's a giant building with huge windows. Why does it have huge windows? Sunlight, absolutely. And this newfangled thing, electricity's out, and we're starting to build infrastructure, but the infrastructure is not super reliable yet. So obviously what I'm going to do is I'm going to tear out all my production lines and I'm going to replace them with these electric motors that nobody's really proven yet, and I'm going to put in conveyors that nobody's invented yet to change the way we do everything, right? No. If I'm a business owner, I'm going to buy lights so that I can have 2 shifts of production, right? And then am I going to immediately go look for the next place to spend money? No, what am I going to do? Yeah, I'm going to wait and get a return on that investment. And so you go, yeah, Devlin, sure, but that was the 1920s. Technology moves faster today. Like, it does, but capital doesn't. When was the first e-commerce website in the United States launched? Anybody know?
Probably the 90s.
Late 90s, 97. When did we get to 10% of all retail purchases in the United States going through e-commerce? 2000 something, so 5-10 years later, I got a vote for 5 or 10 years. Anybody taking the over, or who's taking the under?
About 20 maybe.
10%.
Just to 10%.
Getting to 10% of retail purchases in the United States going through e-com.
Maybe 2020.
Maybe 2020?
See, the most
2019.
2019.
So this is the Commerce Department's stats on it, and they give a quarter-over-quarter breakdown. When did we hit 20%? If it took us 22 years to get to 10%, how long do you think it took us to get to 20%? Right into 2020? It hasn't happened yet. We spiked in 2020 to 18.4%, and we've pulled back this year. Current, we're at about 16.8. Now those numbers shift a little bit if you look at transactions versus the volume of dollars, but they wouldn't keep building H-E-Bs and CVS's and Walmarts and Targets and Home Depots and Lowe's if people weren't walking in there every day to buy things. We have this false perception that technology moves much, much faster than it does, and that it's going to change everything. When in fact, the whole of retail just got bigger between 97 and today. E-com added a whole nother set of consumer behaviors that we didn't have before, because there was a barrier between you and spending money. You had to know the store that was local, and you had to then drive over there, and they had to have it in stock, and there were all these barriers to purchasing. And now I can go on Amazon and find just about everything I want. And if they don't have it, Target or Walmart's website probably does. And so you get into this interesting space of e-commerce has actually opened up behaviors. Now, the reason I bring this example up is it's multifaceted. In 1997, that was an $8.4 million website that took 3 years to build. What would it cost to reproduce the original e-com website that ultimately became books.com in its first version that went live? What do you think that would take to reproduce in dollars and time today?
Less than a week.
15 minutes on the free trial of Shopify with way more features than the first thing did. Does that mean we got rid of all of our e-commerce developers? No, but the business problems got massively more complex because we brought in real-time fulfillment and multi-vendor fulfillment and same-day shipping and next-day shipping and all these things that changed the way this continued to grow. And so as we confront the economics of this, what we find is that the cost of capital is the limiter, because these systems move slowly, but they do move a lot over time. Now, when I look at that to a Scrum team, what do you think the first productivity gain of the AI era is going to be for a Scrum team? Is it going to be AI native development and they've got AI devs only? Or is it going to be AI coding assistants, which is the modern day equivalent of installed lights, so that we can have productivity happening much faster? And then we'll have overnight development agents, like have been launched by most of the coding assistant companies, where I give it a set of tasks to do, and then in the morning I review it, and then I continue. And so we'll have shift work, where the second shift is digital labor. And so this will incrementally change the overall approach. Now the reason that I dig into this is, anybody remember this from high school econ? What is it?
Anchor.
Absolutely, price elasticity by supply and demand. If supply stays stable and demand skyrockets, what happens to price? Goes way up. If supply stays stable and demand plummets, what happens to price? Goes down, absolutely. Now, is there a demand limit for software development? Is there a limit to how much software the world wants produced?
Yes.
We haven't gotten close.
There might be, but we haven't gotten close. I would also argue we've seen ever-growing backlogs. No matter how much technology we produce, we want more technology. I'll prove it to you. How many folks have a backlog somewhere that you're working in or around for something you want software to happen? Your company, exactly. Now, let's say, magic wand, all of that's in production, bug-free, right now. When you get into the office tomorrow, guess what's gonna happen?
You're gonna work with new features.
Yeah, new features. Well, hey, now that we have that, I want this. Now that we have that, I want this. And so, no matter how much we deliver, there will always be the next thing. Now, if you look at this, it is primarily driven by the competitive environment. Because if we slow down, our competitors outrun us. And so we have this tension to keep moving forward at a roughly similar pace to our competitors. In the 1990s, did anybody gripe about the color of buttons on the screen?
That hasn't
You think they griped a lot more after Facebook went live? Because we've raised the expectations of technical sufficiency by inundating entire generations with technology. They now have much, much higher expectations. An application that would have been state-of-the-art in the 90s is now looked at as terrible. And so we have to then progress this and go, okay, so it's gonna get more complex, it's gonna get bigger. We're gonna have a lot of increasing demand for some of the things we do in software development. But we're also gonna have some demand limits. Is software testing demand limited?
More so.
More so. Because once you've reached a sufficient amount of quality, you only have to test the new software. So if I ship a new feature, I have to test the software. But if I don't ship a new feature and I'm happy with the current quality, do I need to test? No. And so there will be certain tasks in the practice of software development that are demand limited that AI is going to displace, and it's going to change the role disproportionately. And then there's going to be some tasks that aren't demand limited, and those are going to be a bigger and bigger portion of the role. Now I say tasks, not jobs, because AI doesn't replace jobs. All technology ever invented by humanity is task specific. From the wheel to the shovel to generative AI, it does a task, it doesn't do a job. If I asked you to go create a presentation, you're obviously going to go open Outlook and start your presentation, right? For everybody looking at me like I'm insane right now, why wouldn't you?
Oh, that's the wrong tool.
Wrong tool, absolutely. What is the right tool for a presentation?
PowerPoint.
PowerPoint? Are there other options?
Slides,
Canva, Google Slides, Preza. Is Preza still around? I might have showed my age there, my bad.
I haven't heard of Dama.
Huh?
Dama.
Dama? Now here's the thing. Can any of those send an email?
Possibly.
Canva maybe. You'd have to hook up some external stuff to send the email. You could write the email in them, but could you send it? And this is where I say technology is task-centric. They're aimed at tasks. Large language models are no different. What tasks were large language models aimed at? The answer, by the way, is not all tasks. They were aimed at understanding language. That's it. Now, language is the operating system of our civilization, and so that's a very broad task category. But can my large language model go update the financials in my company? Not without me writing software to plug it into my financial system. And that would probably be a pretty bad idea. And so we get into this idea of task displacement, not job displacement. Now the other side of the curve is having to look at what AI can and can't do, because it's task-centric. Now this is software development. You could tell, right?
Sure.
The orange boxes are things AI can hands down do better than a human today. And by better, I mean faster. Okay? Can AI write code faster than a human can code today? Yes. Hands down, unequivocally, yes. I didn't say better, I said faster. Can it write tests faster than a human can write tests today? Hands down, unequivocally, yes. Can it sit down with a customer and understand what they actually need? No. Now it can help with that, but it can't do it 5 times faster than a human. And so the job collapses and looks like this. Some of the tasks get faster and easier, and some of them cannot change. They incrementally grow, or incrementally change, they don't revolutionarily change. Now when that happens, we have to ask what to do with the excess capacity we just created. And so if I combine demand limitation and collapsibility of task, I can actually map out what a role changes. And this is where product ownership ends up taking center stage. Because if I go back here, collaboration with a customer, understanding the features coming in. If I'm shipping features at 3 to 5x the rate I was months ago, what became far more important? Filling up the backlog with workable, defined features. Now, if I'm going slower as a team, is that a big problem? No, because it's theory of constraints. You always go after the thing holding back additional velocity. Right now, that is largely the speed and pace the team can understand the requirement and translate it into working software, which is what Agile was originally designed to solve. But if that design constraint changes, then the process structure, team structure of Agile also needs to shift. Because we've always been told, single product owner, right? Product owner by committee is an ANSI pattern. Yes? Can a single product owner outrun 6 people with AI assistance in keeping enough food in the pipeline, aka user stories that are design ready, enough detailed acceptance criteria, and high value to outrun that team?
Oh, no.
Probably not.
Be tight.
And so then it's, okay, now do I have a product owner plus a couple of BAs, and now my team structure is changing. Because the thing that AI can't collapse at a 5x rate is drastically changing my processes, my team structure. Make sense? And so product ownership ends up taking this center stage, and I call it product ownership. That is the process by which we elicit, document, prioritize, and prepare features to be developed. Now we can help with this. There are tons of AI tools that will help with accelerating workflow design and UX prototyping, those kind of things, but those are still pieces of an overall process. And as those get faster, awesome, then it does nothing but highlight product ownership as well. Because if I had a UX team and I was working on a new screen and I went, hey, I'm product owner, I sit down, I spend an hour and a half in a meeting, I describe what I want from that screen. How long does it take the UX team to come back with a clickable prototype in Figma of that screen? Last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. What's the turnaround time on that? A week, maybe, roughly? What's the turnaround time on that today with Figma Make? Within the hour. Now, as a product owner, I just had a week interval of being able to focus on other things that I now have an hour interval. So I'm gonna either have to spend way more time reviewing and preparing those things, or we're gonna slow down the intake into the dev team assuming the dev team can process it. We'll talk about that here in a minute too. I see question eyebrows, Drew. Fire away, man.
Well, I'll wait till you're done.
And so, if I go from what I've been lovingly referring to as the Scrum era. The Scrum era is from the time that the Standish Group's Chaos Manifesto was published to roughly 2024. It became the de facto standard for software development projects worldwide. It went from less than 5% to greater than 85% of software projects claiming to use Scrum. Now we can argue whether they're doing it well or they're doing it correctly or if it was cargo culted Scrum or whatever those terms are. But it became the de facto standard. Iterative development was the de facto standard. And we've seen a pretty big shift. Less full-time Scrum Masters, more Agile project manager roles are getting published. Less strict adherence to Scrum and a lot more things like Kanban and those kind of things. So you get into this interesting space of the world's already starting down this shift because developer capacity was the original design constraint, and we've just unlocked a significant uptick in developer capacity. We look at the next design, it was the cost of change. It was incredibly high cost to change once something was already in a sprint because the design efforts involved were so large. But we just talked about the design efforts shrinking from a week to an hour, right? And we look at task duration. I could be a developer working on something for 5 days to ship a significantly important, impactful thing. Now, hopefully, if I'm doing this correctly, I'm checking in incrementally through those 5 days, right? And now, with AI coding assistance, I can ship something significantly impactful in a couple of hours. And so we see this kind of interesting collapse. And then the process cadence has incrementally moved from these time-boxed windows of 2 weeks, 4 weeks, etc., to this continuous flow idea. Whether you're a Kanban person or you're a single piece flow person, or you're just a whip person of we're gonna limit work in progress and incrementally move, that's all that movement towards continuous flow because it removes some of the barriers of being able to pick up additional things, etc. Now, when we move from time box to continuous flow, who's the most impacted? Scrum Master, that's a big step change in their role and responsibility. The business, the product owner, big step changes in their behaviors.
The whole ceremonies go away.
The ceremonies go away, so we rely on the discipline of the dev team to continue doing things like retrospectives every 2 weeks. Even though they're still in the middle of a task at that point, or a story, stopping and retroing. Because it's one of the easiest things to go by the wayside when I lose the time box. If I'm not super disciplined, I just stop iterating on getting better in my process.
Unless you retrospect continuously.
Sure, you could retrospect as you ship each item, but it requires the team to
Well, not
have a
recognizing,
cadence.
it's just part of the culture of having retro, having continuous improvement.
Yeah,
As a
I love that ideal. I've never actually seen it work.
Happens
Where-
very often in Canada teams, where they drop retrospectives entirely and operate on a continuous improvement model.
Yeah, I've been on a few Kanban teams. Now, keep in mind, I've been out of the building software game for like 7 years. And what I found is we reached an equilibrium we were very happy with, and we dropped retros. But we didn't continuously pursue improvement until we added it back onto the calendar at a regular cadence.
Yeah, they're reaching a happy point.
Yeah.
Is one of the patterns that we see, and it requires, that's the role of the Scrum Master, the
Kanban master,
the
Scrum
coach
master.
coming in to identify that. The coach will say, the coach to bring it about and say, now we impose some change because the team will change until they hit the happy point.
Mhm.
And then they lose the motivation.
There's no motivation. Once I'm happy, I'm comfortable.
So the model for doing that is to inject change.
Yeah,
Small amounts of change, a near attempt without even looking like change.
yeah.
And they have
A/B
to-
testing processes,
and
those
they
kind
have
of
to
things.
adapt, right?
Yeah.
So you change reporting requirements. Okay, well,
Or update and expand on definition of done and those kind of things.
Yeah,
Love
it's an external influence that causes a little bit of pain.
Mhm.
That's sort of the thing that creates the pearl, right?
Absolutely. And I love that as an ideal state, and I think that's where we're moving towards, which gets us to that, all right, coordination focus has to shift from these meeting and event-centric coordinations to these event-responsive. It's not about the event being on the calendar, it's, hey, when this happens, here's how the team is gonna respond to it, right? When we have something get blocked in testing, the team's gonna swarm those things to clear them, right? And then immediately after those things happen, we're gonna retrospect to avoid it and change our process so it doesn't happen again. Like, you get into that kind of responsive, fully automatic type things. But those are big changes that rely on a crazy disciplined team. And even the best teams lose discipline sometimes. Now, I map all of that out so that we can actually take a look at it. So what I did was I took that demand limit structure and the task collapsibility structure and I mapped it out onto a 4-square graph because I'm a consultant. That's what we do. We put all knowledge on the planet into 4 squares. Here's what an accounting clerk at Improving looks like, based on the tasks we ask them to do on a weekly basis. I mapped each task. The vertical is how much time automation and AI can impact that task. The top is that collapsible range. The bottom is very little impact, 10, 15% incremental change. Make sense? And then the bottom is there a low demand limit for that, or is there a high demand limit for that? Low demand limit tasks in this case would be something like payroll. Running payroll, we used to have payroll clerks. We have accounting clerks because payroll is just a set of tasks. But if I'm 5 times more effective at calculating, finishing, submitting accurately, oh, weird. That's funny. There we go. By the way, the secret is it's hanging on the back of the TV. And we got to turn off the energy saver whatever's. So if I could run payroll 5 times faster with 100% accuracy, do you think your companies would pay people 5 times more frequently? No, because there's a hard limit on those tasks. And so what we end up with is this. And then I took software development and I mapped out the tasks we ask a software developer to do on a weekly basis. And I also took sales because I wanted a few different ones. And what we found is there were some categories where the majority of tasks in a role fell. And so if I took the top and I said the majority of tasks for a software developer fall in highly automatable with AI, but also high demand limit or no limit, means we're going to have to do more. And it means that our expectations are going to have to get much, much higher. Sure.
We have one, the tiny clerk in the top right.
Yep.
What was that? What's the context of that?
Oh, it's the color of the dots. So these dots are accounting clerk.
There was one tiny clerk in the top right, that one.
Who does that represent?
Yeah, what's the context for that?
Oh, this task?
Yeah.
I'd have to look it up in the Excel sheet, but we literally took every task we asked them to do and mapped them, and that's the Excel sheet that drives this. But I'll crack open the Excel sheet here in a minute. In these cases, you're going to have somebody that just does more. And not a little more, a lot more. So how do you sit down with a software development team, which is the majority of software development tasks fall up here, and go, by the end of next year, we are going to aim for 3 times the features shipped valued to the business. And I'm not talking about 3 times the velocity, because everybody with any brain can lie about points in estimation and triple their velocity. Like, that's how that works. When you measure a team on velocity increase, you get lied to. 3 times more features delivered that are valuable to the business by the end of next year. Let's talk about how to go do it, right? And so expectations shift, processes shift, and approach shifts in that. Now, if I have demand limited things, it will either reduce headcount or the role will have to grow. So we talked about testing is demand limited, right? I'm gonna ship 3 times more features, which means I've got 3 times more testing, but I also expect that with automated testing tools and AI test assistants and those kind of things, testing is gonna get much, much faster. So the job of a QA, instead of having 3 QAs to 5 devs, we might have 2, right? Or our QAs are going to help fill the BA gap, to help fill the pipeline and grow that role. Or they're going to pick up more automation structures and they're going to help pick up SRE and DevOps. The job will grow to fill the additional capacity.
Even you know, in the latest industries now, what they're looking for to bridge the gap between developer and tester. They see no, there's no 2 roles. It's one engineer that can do the development and testing both with the help of AI.
And I hear you. What I will say is, for my entire career, that's been an anti-pattern, because developers who build something will only test it for the way it was built to be used, whereas a third party or somebody else on the team. Now, I have seen a pattern succeed very well. That is, Drew and I are working on a team together. I build my feature, he builds his feature, we trade, and I test his feature, he tests my feature. That works very, very well.
Yeah.
But if I just build and test my own stuff, you end up with massive bug density. And then in this high limit stuff, where it's high demand limit but low AI automation impact, this is the product owner and BA roles. We're gonna get incrementally better, but the only way to significantly scale output is through headcount. It's through changing the team structure or changing the way we get something design ready into a sprint. How many BAs does a typical team need if the dev team is shipping 3 times more features?
There's another answer, which is the developers need to pick up more business,
They could, yeah.
and the ones that are successful will.
Yeah, you might blend from, all right, we're gonna do more. That more might not be ship more software, because you might run out of software that, or features that are ready to go into the software, and you transition into collaboration with the business, and you end up becoming a product owner / dev or a BA / dev. That's an answer. But if I'm trying to maximize features shipped, it is easier to find somebody with the interpersonal skills and requirements gathering skills than it is to find somebody that can ship 3x the features.
Yeah, that's right. So when I was at Landmark, most of my developers were domain specialists.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't have any BAs, did not.
Well, because they knew the domain and they would keep it.
They were the BAs. They knew more about it. And the arguments would be the product manager. The product manager is the one owning the business, not the domain necessarily.
They own the prioritization where the money went.
They said, yeah, I agree, this is a good thing to do, but not now because this is more important. This is what's driving business. Right?
Yep.
So
I love the SME dev model. It's
Yeah.
what I did in corporate at Tyson Foods. It's what most oil and gas companies do, and it works very well. But it takes a lot of years to build an SME dev.
well, it requires a specialization.
Huh?
A type of specialization.
Yeah, you can't buy an SME dev off the
Well,
shelf.
not exactly.
Like,
When we went to try to go to India, we couldn't find them.
Yeah.
They don't exist.
You know, it's, you know, basically what you're talking about in the beginning was what technology wants, and I loved how you kind of, you know, laid down on top of other technologies and how they have morphed, and you've laid down the software development. It reminds me of TG Ono, the
Mhm.
whole lean manufacturing situation. This is exactly, to
Yeah.
me, as the cross-training, where now when you talk about swarming, you're pulling things through the pipeline instead of pushing them through the pipeline. That's what it feels like to me.
Absolutely. And I will say that's actually where you'll see the kind of utopic version of Kanban that Todd was describing
Okay.
is when you have that team that's gotten to that level of understanding of what is happening, if you have 2 sprints or you have a month or 4 features shipped or whatever time box you want to use, right? Where the process hasn't changed and nobody's raised a red flag and gone, we could have done this better. You have the same moment that Toyota Manufacturing went through where people stopping the production line.
Right.
And they went in and they went, what's wrong?
Right.
Not, we've solved it. That's that happy equilibrium and comfort seeking the team will force itself out of. What's up, Terrence?
So, this might be not necessarily a SME, but I was wondering about this because I've seen this happen too, where you'll involve a person that is a subject matter expert in the development process, specifically the design process. And it's kind of like at some point in time you realize you're dealing with a mad king because they understand what they're saying, and you're trying to tell them that that's not how a UI or UX pattern will work. Nobody else using the software will understand it. Is this something that kind of happens in this environment or not?
So it is the dysfunction of having an SME who's an expert that's not governed by advice and a product owner.
Right.
Because an SME designing an interaction that they would love as a imminent expert, and then going, hey, how many people in our customer base are your level of expert? And they're like, oh, nobody. A good product owner or a good dev team that's doing UX or service design is going to question and suss that out. If you don't have those checks, you end up creating the perfect expert system that your real user base can't touch.
Right.
Since the business context is often missing, and it's often missing in internal development.
Absolutely.
It's the one thing, when I was living in the product world and I'm thinking, oh, we suck. And then we go and look at what's going on in the right, it's like, wow, this really sucks.
Yeah. We're not good, they're worse. Like,
They're terrible.
The
right?
best of us are in law.
And in fact, no wonder that anyone can improve things by tenfold because they suck. You know what I mean? And
there's a lot of meat on the
There's a
bone.
lot of meat, yeah. And when we were, we were actually doing pretty good. We were doing better than some of the best Agile teams now. We just wanted to be better, right?
Yeah.
So we kept looking, what could we do better?
So we joke about this, it's called look down the mountain.
Yeah.
Because if you go to my leadership team here, or you go to any of our leadership teams around the world, and you go, hey, how are we doing? You know what you get immediately? All the things we could have done better.
Yes.
Right? Well, we could increase benefits and we could have, more Taco Tuesdays and we should have a margarita machine in the office. Like literally the list is infinite. And so we have to tell people, yeah, it's great to look up the mountain to where we're going and see what we need to do to get there. But you also have to look down the mountain and go, oh wow, we're actually not doing that bad by comparing to the market, right? If I talk to my leadership team here, I could get 100 items of things we should be doing better. Should. But we also have 10 years of Best Places to Work awards, the last 6 of them in the top 5. And so it's like, well, maybe we're not doing so bad. But my team isn't built to look at what we do well and get happy. They're built to look at what we could do better, which is that pull through the process. Always look for the next better.
Sure.
That is emotionally difficult if you don't stop and look down the mountain, though. And then there's this whole box that is a distraction that we should absolutely ignore. Because there are things in every job. There are tasks in every job that AI can maybe help with, but not by a lot, and you don't need to do it a lot of the time, and just get rid of it. Like, and these are what I call novelty or toy demos when it comes to AI. Give you an example. How many folks in this room spend the majority of your day reading and writing emails? 4 people. The majority of your day. That is 4 or more hours a day reading and writing emails. Okay? How many folks spend more than 2 of those 4 hours writing emails? It's almost all reading. So the Click, Copilot, or ChatGPT, or Gemini for Workspace, or whatever tool you want to use, help me write this email, is in this bucket. It's a novelty. It's a cute demo. It doesn't actually increase the productivity of the team. Now, hey, summarize my emails to help me sort, filter, etc. might actually be valuable, right? But there's a ton of novelty, cute things happening in this that we got to sort out and filter based on the economics of their value. And that is how many hours will they save, how much additional features can I ship? Because as a team, valuable features shipped to production is the goal.
Oh, could you go back to cut screen?
Sure.
And
If you drop me an email, I'll send you the slides too.
well, I will do that. And just while we're together, you know, you're talking probably about 2 feet over my head, way above my pay grade. But I absolutely don't quite understand the X and Y axis here. And,
Sure.
And how they are a continuum. So will you just go over that for me really
Sure.
one more time?
So we rated everything on a 10-point scale on
Every task.
every task on a 10-point scale in both directions. So this is, by percentage, how much can AI and automation impact that task?
Oh, how much can AI automation impact that task?
Exactly.
You know, low impact. What does time impact mean?
That is the, how much time impact can it have? Is it gonna take,
That's the definition of that axis. Okay,
Yes.
that's what I was, okay.
and then this one is demand limit of, is the demand limit on a 1 to 10 scale, 10 being unlimited and 1 being very low, like we don't need to do any more like payroll. So that's this scale.
Oh,
And
that's
so
how much you need that task.
how much, if we could do it 5 times more,
Yes.
would that matter?
Oh,
Right?
I see, okay, gotcha.
And so by mapping them, we get these 4 big buckets of tasks.
I see, I'm with you now. Thank
Perfect.
you so much for taking a second.
No worries. Now let's dig in a little bit more into how this shifts. This is the AIDER polyglot evaluation. This is publicly published data on Epoch AI on all the models up to June, I think it actually went to July of 2025, on their task efficiency in software development. Task efficiency is when I say, go write a method that can do X. Now, the best in the world on this one was 84.1% of the time. 84.1% of the time, go give me a method to do X, came back with an acceptable answer. That sounds pretty impressive, right? How many mechanical engineers in the room? My truck has 60,000 moving parts. If I have 100% manufacturing tolerance, will it work? My truck won't even start with that level of tolerance. 84.1% sounds great until you add the word autonomous agent in front of it. Because what I did was, by the way, I said state of the art was 84.1. The lowest number on here is a 90% model. Because 84.1 is below the level of a junior developer. A junior developer hits about 85%. When given a task, go write a method to do this, 85% of the time a junior developer straight out of college will achieve that goal. Now, with a 90% model, I can give it 3 decisions before the failure rate drops below acceptable. Because the errors from the first tasks chain into the next tasks. Because the large language models that are doing the coding do not know those are mistakes. And so you end up with what's called context poisoning, where it thought about 3 ways to solve the problem, and now all 3 of those ways, even though it didn't choose 2 of them, are in the context, and it'll start going and implementing the one it didn't choose. And so you end up with context poisoning. Or you end up with, it just chooses a really bad way to go, and it fails immediately. And it doesn't know it's failed, so it keeps going. Now the reason this matters is because this is an efficiency. It's an economics question. Is the advantage I get from the assistance in the process overcome by the amount of time I have to spend to fix the outputs when it fails? Make sense? And so what you end up with is a labor efficiencies problem. I'm going to spend time reviewing it. That has to be deducted from the value return of having an autonomous agent. We have to get to, by the way, near perfection, 99.5% models before we can hand it a simple user story. Simple user story is roughly estimated about 35 decisions. If it's well documented with acceptance criteria that are testable and given within language, etc. 35 decisions, which means we need perfect or near perfect models to be able to have truly autonomous software development. So we're in this assistance space where the job of a software developer is now to manage the decision length. How many decisions do I give it before I review its answers and change its direction? And so what I do with these systems all the time is I'll give it direction and watch what it's doing and interject, because it will write software faster than I could type software. I just have to supervise it heavily. I have to micromanage it because I can't trust it to make good decisions in long chains. Now, this requires delegation, which is the ability to effectively communicate a task to another entity. It requires management of that entity to make sure it doesn't make mistakes, and performance feedback to that entity to allow it to correct. And as we know, everybody graduating college gets those skills by default. Everybody's good at management, delegation, and performance management, right? But we just made those frontline contributor tasks because they're managing an AI system that they have to do those things for. Now, the good news is those AI systems can't go to HR. So it's fine, but we're gonna have to teach these skills as a part of it because the technical depth of understanding what it's doing is still very important, but we've added individual frontline contributor skills that weren't there before. Now the future look for this is, I believe the Agile values are equally valuable today as they were in the 40s, the 80s, the 2000s. They're equally valuable today, which is rapid innovation, response to change, right? Like the Agile Manifesto is still 100% accurate in its values. Still 100% accurate in the 12 principles. The frameworks developed on it are built on assumptions that may not be true anymore. Not all of them, some of them are much better to make this leap, like Kanban, but Kanban's also not the most popular Agile framework worldwide. We're gonna see that shift, or we're gonna see Scrum have to shift pretty heavily. Now, in addition to that, the adaptations of this are gonna end up with this continuous process and flow-based development, which means that we're gonna have different management and response systems, right? We typically have like a Jira board or an Azure DevOps thing where everything kind of, it's in the backlog, it's prioritized, and it gets ready to be built because that's when there's a UX design, there's acceptance criteria, like it's gone through the prep work to be able to be picked up. If I'm talking continuous flow, those are steps ahead of this. And so we're incrementally making sure that we're filling the pipeline because otherwise the flow will stop. And so we're gonna expand the process backwards and pull the product owner into that workflow, pull the BAs or the SME developers or the QAs who are filling over. We're gonna actually, it won't be backlog in progress. It'll be idea, expansion, definition, and all of those will end up being part of the continuous flow because if those aren't done at scale, the backlog will end up empty. Now, very mature continuous flow teams do this already. I'm not introducing something new, I'm just saying almost all of our Scrum teams, this will be new for. And then obviously we've got an upskilling problem, both for the developers who are picking these things up, the QAs who are going to be interacting with these in new ways, and the product owners who will be using a series of tools they've probably never used before, and they're going to be producing outputs that are not text in a backlog item, right? Whether that's using a tool like Clarify or whether that's using a Azure DevOps AI assistant or a Jira AI assistant or whatever that is, they're going to be creating outputs that actually flow into the development process. And we're going to have versions of those outputs. We're going to iterate on those outputs for design mockups and definitions and acceptance criteria in a way we really have never done that before. Which means our design artifacts are going to start looking a lot more like the waterfall design artifacts without the problems of the waterfall design artifacts. Because the problem with big design up front wasn't that we did the design. It was the labor cost and time cost of doing that amount of design. It took 9 months. But if we could have gotten all that design done in a week, we wouldn't have cared. Because the cost of doing it was so much lower. It was the 9 months, not the amount of design. And so our design is going to start looking a lot more reminiscent of BRDs and stuff like that from the 90s. Why? Because they help the AI agents code exactly what we're looking for.
There's another perspective there, and that is that as you shift left, there's a lot more rapid prototype feedback, and in fact, these design what you're looking for is not getting it right up front, but learning faster.
Absolutely.
So the element of the design may be very, very rapid, with very rapid feedback, with lots of loops.
Yeah.
A lot more loops than we have today.
I
Now,
agree.
good teams do a lot of loops
Mhm.
already, but this is going to force it because, again, where your limiting factor is your product ownership, your business
Mhm.
side, what you've got to do is get to where how do those people not just able to do more, but
How do we
able to
maximize the leverage?
Maximize their value.
Absolutely.
And
So let's
the fact that- yeah.
play through an example of this, if you don't mind being a
Sure.
guinea pig with me.
Yeah.
Okay? So, I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna go to this. I'm gonna go, all right, Todd, you and I are starting an app company. We're gonna build an app, okay? What do we want this app to do? You're the product owner, I'm your dev team, we're gonna go start a company. What's the app we're building?
What's that insatiable demand? What do we have to have? Something for product owners. we'll say.
Oh, fantastic. I love that idea. Something for product owners.
Something for product owners. Something that make product owners more valuable.
Now, I'm gonna use some design tools, and the tools themselves don't matter. It is simply about how the conversation is gonna change, okay? So traditionally, product owner would go, they create a backlog, they create some rough ideas, etc. But let's say that you and I meet at an event at the Ion and we decide we wanna create a company that night. We now have the ability to iterate those loops so much faster. Rather than me going off and trying to create some mock-ups. I'm like, all right, so we're gonna go web app, we're gonna go tablet, we're gonna go mobile. What are we thinking?
Okay, all of them.
Sure, but which one are we gonna start with?
Okay. Let's go with the web app first.
Web app, fantastic. All right, and so give me a quick description, something to help product owners. Give me a little bit more meat on that. Focus on what you want it to accomplish for them, not how.
Yeah. So, see product owners struggling with prioritization. I see product owners struggling with what's the business problem? How does this actually impact the business? Struggling with I get different responses from different people. How do I synthesize? How do I turn that into something that I know will make a market? Conflicting demands.
Multiple stakeholder groups and customer segments. There we go. Awesome. And what do we want the look and feel of our app to be? Do we want it to be fun, artsy, tech forward, modern? What are we thinking?
Let's see. I think we'll go for fun.
Awesome.
Fun and awesome.
So let's go modern, easy to use, trusted, intuitive navigation, fun, and a bit sarcastic. All right, so Todd, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna use this tool, and in what would typically have been you and I talking for half an hour, and then I go off for a week, and then I schedule some time, and then you and I get back together and go, what about this?
Yeah.
Instead of that workflow, I'm going to, in several seconds, and this takes a little while, but they're getting faster, I'm gonna have a design workflow that's clickable that I go, hey, is this what you meant? And we can walk through it, and we can make adjustments, and we can iterate on it. Because, all right, so, hey, you didn't mention this, but do we want like dashboards on the product effectiveness, the business problems we've identified and how we've shipped features and those kind of impacts? Like a business value dashboard for the product?
Yeah, I think something that indicates value that I can communicate somehow. Sounds good.
Awesome, I dig it. Now the top takes a little longer because this is actually creating, you'll notice it's filling it in, a clickable prototype of the entire system that I can dump out into Figma, or I can dump out into React components and HTML and those kind of things. Remember I said that we're gonna create artifacts as a product owner that are gonna then flow into the rest of the process. We've always had to have a technical translator to move from what the product owner intended to the starting point for software development. We can shorten that translation time too. So I go, all right, so let's go in here and go, all right, here's the onboarding, right? We got configuring project, feature requests, bug fixes. Is this kind of the look and feel you were thinking?
No, it's
No, awesome. What do you want to do with it? All right, what do you want to fix about it?
let's see. It's too busy. For this purpose.
More business-like in feel. Okay? And so what this is going to go do is it's going to take that screen and go, oh, okay, too busy, make it more business-like, and it's going to give me an additional design concept. I'm going to go, all right, let's crack that open. The background's gotten a little less complex. It's reduced a couple of things here. I still probably want some more changes, right?
Yeah, background is too busy.
Yep.
Fun is too early.
Got it. Make more changes. Tone down the background significantly. Now, would a product owner, even if they hated it, after a week of UX work, be likely to give a whole bunch of small feedback on a product?
No, they just scream.
No. There you go.
Oh,
Better? Less busy? It's a little swirly, artsy?
yeah, maybe still. I don't know. That may be okay.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can go for now. It's probably not going to last.
Simplify it.
Well,
Not rid of the
and
noise.
now we're into prompt engineering, and basically you can build sets of, from artists renderings and so forth, you can build sets of things, that are.
And if you have
much
an
more
existing
complex.
design complex
Exactly.
or a brand guide or those kind of things, you can easily lay to that. I
That's
didn't
right.
have that for us, but we could define our brand guidance, whatever.
Strange
Now-
choice of color.
So
Yellow.
this interaction,
Right.
I just went through 4 design cycles
Right.
in 3.5 minutes.
Right.
That's the point, is to speed the loops, to your point.
No, exactly. And making product owners more. There are so many things that I was in India and I given a talk on some of the market research we've done in some of our course development work, and it took us a long time to do that. We ran it through and on a couple of different approaches to do it, and essentially produced the same market research within 15 minutes.
Yeah. And the research agents and those kind of things to product owners are phenomenally valuable.
You know, it was deep dive, and it was great. It was about the same material I was getting. Was, I still have to do some human assessment, right? So it wasn't perfect, but.
And none of these systems, none of what we've talked about are ready yet. Remember the stacking errors problem I talked about of autonomous agents? That applies to every one of these tools that's helping an expert leverage their skills, from product owner to scrum master to Kanban master to BA to tester. All of these are augments, significant prosthesis to help human expertise. But if you take the human expert out of it, it's an empty suit.
Right.
Yeah, and if someone uses it without checking.
Or without the expertise to check.
Without the expertise to check, they just assume it's right.
Yeah.
It
Then you
can
get
be
a
dangerous.
high volume pile of poo.
Yeah. Exactly.
Like, and that's where we land. Now, I love that somebody used the term prompt engineer. Prompt engineer is probably the dumbest job title to exist in our market today.
Oh, okay.
So in the 1980s, there was an equally stupid job title. From 1983 to 1985, it was one of the highest paid job titles in the United States, and then it was almost entirely gone by 1990. Anybody remember what this is? Computer operator. Why did it go away? Why is computer operator no longer a primary title in IT? It's not a job, it's a skill. Everybody became a computer operator. Can you imagine somebody today going, will you operate the computers? Could you imagine hiring somebody who'd never written an email? Prompt engineering is not a job, it's a skill. Everyone will have to do it. Just like you had to learn Excel and PowerPoint and email,
That's cool.
we're gonna have to learn prompts. Now, I'm gonna give you the shortcut version of this. It takes 40 seconds to describe, okay? And it will skip every LinkedIn training or prompt engineering YouTube you ever have to do, okay? This works on every model in every tool. Role, task, context, constraint. Role targets to the statistical density that you care about. So I go, if I'm doing market research, as a market researcher, if I'm doing UX work, as a UX expert, if I'm doing business analysis, as a business expert. And the fun thing is you can make up roles that don't exist in real world by combining things and going, hey, as a business analyst with deep expertise in underwater basket weaving and oil nominations, and it will have all those things because what it's doing is shaping the statistical density that it's going after. And then task. Remember we said that when you stack additional tasks or decisions together, your chance of failure goes way up. So you want a single task. Do you know how you tell if you have a single task? Does it have the word and? If you say and, you're statistically way more likely to fail. So just split it into two asks. Hey, I'd like you to put together a prioritized list and do blah, blah, blah. Hey, I'd like you to put together a prioritized list. And then when it comes back with that, you're like, now do X.
Okay.
Right? That splits the decision chain. Context is all the things that it will need to know that you can provide that wouldn't be available on the general internet. So that could be your design principles, your color scheme, your existing design concepts or components database or coding standards, whatever those additional things that are not publicly available on the internet. And then constraints are the things it's likely to do that you don't want it to do. As a UX designer, create me a login and account setup screen based on these concepts. Do not include social login because it's highly likely to do it and you don't want it. That structure for prompt engineering will get you 99% of the way there on every tool on the planet today.
Nice.
There you go.
Thank you. Free stuff.
It's my prompt engineering class.
So I did a class on
Okay.
measurement. I loved what you said about painted pearls. Okay, I love that. But it seemed like we were artificially implementing paint to get the pearls. So what I'm wanting is
Only when they're happy.
do what?
Only when they're happy, please.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's fine. That's
Yeah.
fine. You
Yeah.
should never be in a happy place. That's what I learned. You should never ever be happy. But so what?
Can we change that to comfortable?
Okay. So what is the multidimensional metric that we can use in this chain of work that we have in our process that creates that feedback loop that's more like, generating real, what would you use? What would you say?
So, I don't think you're gonna like my answer, and I apologize.
No.
There's not one that's good for all moments.
Oh, okay, that's fair. That's fair.
Because it will need to change the same way your team's processes will need to change. When you have no measure, velocity's fine.
I got you.
With all of its problems,
I got it.
velocity is fine when you have no measure.
Right.
Now, once you have a measure, velocity stops being sufficient. You go, okay, we want to shift velocity to
Velocity over
business value
okay.
by feature shipped. And then we're like, ooh, that's better, but now we need to add quality. And we go
Gotcha.
business value shipped over bugs created
Gotcha.
so that it's ratio based.
Okay.
And then you go, all right, now let's do cycle time on top of that. Business value shipped categorized by how many weeks it was in the backlog before we shipped it. Right? Because speed to market might matter for my team. Now, keep in mind, each team's measurements are going to be unique to that team and the business they serve.
Okay.
But what you're going to see is incremental expansion. The Flynn effect is actually the societal problem that this causes. So the Flynn effect basically says that each generation gets somewhere between 3 and 7 IQ points on average smarter than the previous generation. It doesn't say that you're smarter than your parents, it says your kids are smarter than you are. It says both, but I like that story. Now, what this allows us to do is deal with additional complexity. Remember the e-com story? If I were to try and create the magic metrics that Amazon uses today and apply them to the 1997 e-com website, would it work? No. Because as the business domain gets better served and more complex, the measures have to get better served and more complex. So there's no one true answer.
I did like it.
Okay,
I
great.
liked it.
I didn't disappoint. Great.
So the closest answer I come to is business value add, however, it's a lagging indicator.
Mhm.
And everything else is a proxy of how you're getting.
Yeah.
That's the way I do it. So whatever your best proxy is at the moment for indicating how much future business value I'm adding, that's what you do. And so that's what we described. At certain points, you've got better proxies than others. And you can never use the real one because the real one you don't know until later. So it's a lagging indicator.
Yeah, and lagging
Proxy
indicators don't
means-
allow me to respond fast
Yeah.
enough to change the issue.
Yeah, by the time I get it, I've already lost.
Yeah.
A proxy means you're
It's,
manufacturing the value.
it's something that's trying to predict the one I care about.
So give you an example. For our business,
Right.
we sell project-based professional services. By the time I know I've lost a deal or won a deal, which is the number one thing I want,
Right.
I've already lost it or won it. So how do I know if while I'm pursuing that deal, I'm doing the right things?
That's what proxy means.
And that's the proxy,
That's the
is
proxy.
what is the thing I think is the most likely to represent that future state of success that I can measure right now?
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Not a problem.
So my furrowed eyebrows from earlier,
Yes.
way earlier.
Coming back.
By the way, you have a phenomenal memory. 'Cause
That's
I
what
forgot
I
you
was
had furrow eyebrows
Yeah.
earlier.
Well, no, I've been working on the question
Just
for the
waiting
whole
for
time.
He didn't listen to anything else you said.
Yeah, pretty much. No, so I think everything you said works well once you have like a high functioning Agile team.
Mhm.
And I think that a lot of what Agile gives, it has a kind of tag-along feature of a communication model
Mhm.
that, like, okay, business value, iterations, all those things, but it enables the team a frequency of communicating and a method of communicating that, in this compression that you're talking about, goes away. And, well, I mean, it needs to improve.
It needs to accelerate
Yeah,
significantly.
but like, you know, all college students come out with management degrees, like all
Yeah.
this stuff. Like, the developers and the teammates suck at it now.
Yep.
And like eliminating that and compressing that into like whatever this is, it just makes that worse. Or
Does.
goes away. Or like those skills need to be developed, and there's no model now in this what you present that's like that.
So I believe we have two paths in front of us, and I do not know which of those two, or if even those are the only two that we're going to take. But I'm going to give you what I see possible today. The first is, because communication must accelerate, the average Scrum team size will shrink dramatically. We will likely not see teams bigger than 4 people, because that is one of the most efficient structures for communication. A team of 4 people only has 6 lines of communication, right? And that team will spin out features faster than a team of 9 used to, because of the acceleration effect. That's one potential future. And I do see that smaller companies or companies that are prioritizing speed to market are going to probably end up near there, somewhere. The second potential option is that we are going to augment human communication with autonomous communication mechanisms to short circuit some of those issues. Give you an example. I'm going to transcribe my daily Scrum, automatically recognize through a AI summarization agent any blockers that were raised, and delegate those out across the organization, because those are happening fast enough that we need them to be augmented as an assistance to the human communication mechanism. I believe we will likely see both examples come up in the next several years. My worry is that as we augment human communication with tooling and systems, people believe it's a replacement. Because the number of people who I have worked with whose update in the morning when we're sitting down talking about the day is like, yeah, I'm working on user story 5473. That's not communication. That's a placeholder for me to go look something up in a communication tool. Just tell me what you're working on, right? And so we ended up using Jira and Azure DevOps and these kind of tools to try and help with communication. And what it ended up doing was creating a barrier to communication, because we relied on it to replace communication. And so both of them have problems, because that team of 4 has a maximum velocity cap. has a maximum ability cap on how big their impact can be. And the team of 9 has a communication cap. And so you end up with this interesting space of we're gonna have to choose differently, and the technological answer or non-technological answer is gonna show up differently in those. It's what I see as the future for that. I hope we end up with the smaller teams, not the communication tools. Personally, because I'm an extrovert.
But it seems you end up with a dependency problem either way. And the dependencies usually are the delays that are causing them. They become your bottleneck now, your new bottleneck. They always have been a bottleneck. They're going to be even more bottleneck unless we figure out how we can scale teams and scale across that.
Our tolerance percentage on delays used to be much, much bigger. The faster you go, the tighter those tolerances get. We actually, for just one of our clients, created a backlog analysis tool that runs through and gives the product owner feedback 4 days ahead of the planning on all the stuff at the top of the backlog that's missing acceptance criteria, is ambiguous, is unclear, because we were doing bulk analysis because he was coming into planning and it was creating problems. And stuff like that can accelerate those and it helps with it. But we also have another system where we've got a bunch of interconnected teams working on a pretty big major rewrite, and delays are detected, not reported. So when tasks are slipping under a feature, even though the feature still shows green, it's to try and detect watermelons, right? Green on the outside, red on the inside. Based on task slippage and user story slippage, that feature dependency is going to impact multiple other teams and alert outward. It's detection at that point. It doesn't remove the dependency problem, but accelerates our intervention cycle.
What we find in the Kanban world is that people can live with much larger teams, even up to, the original Kanban work David Anderson did was 40-person team. And they met as a 40-person team and they were done in 15 minutes because they focused on different things, right? And so I think a lot of these things, what we're hitting now are a lot of the elements of Scrum, which to a certain extent I think we're just turning lights on. The fact that we had this planning, this big planning in waterfall, we said, okay, let's at least reduce it down to a 30-day plan.
Yeah. And Scrum was originally designed as micro waterfalls and then iterated over time.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
makes sense.
So I think we're still seeing that there's the fragility to that as we now break it into. I think you're right. It was optimized for what we had a problem with.
Yeah.
And now that problem is now shifted. And a lot of those things have to go away because they don't add value anymore.
Very mature senior teams that were shipping product often reflect a Kanban team most of the time. I used to joke that a mature Scrum team, Scrum is spelled Kanban. And because you end up reducing out the forced ceremonies. But being early and being wrong are often identical, right? Because if I'm not yet to the point where I don't have those constraints, then Kanban is less helpful than Scrum, right? Whereas if I've done Scrum and now I don't have the constraints it was designed for and I stick with it, I'm now less effective than Kanban. And so I think we're in this step change.
Well, there's an element of maturity, right? It's like like I said, one of the teams I had at Landmark, very mature. They've been around on the same product for 10, 20 years. They knew the domain, and they didn't need Scrum.
Yeah. They didn't need the 4-hour planning meeting and tasking,
They held each other accountable.
even those teams end up getting rid of things like estimation because it's a waste of time.
No, exactly. It was unnecessary. That it turns out that even all of those things are even less important now in this new world because everything's about, can I get the business proposition correct? Because that's what I need to iterate on tasks. Can I learn that task?
And can I get it correct and detailed enough that either a human or a human with AI assistant can implement it effectively? That gets you into some fun spots. Now, I do want to be respectful of time. I'm definitely game for hanging around and answering questions or continuing the conversation, but thank you all. This was really fun.
Devlin, it was a great discussion.
Oh,
and this
thank you.
Just open up the
I appreciate it.